Kia ora tātou, no mai haere mai. Wade Manson here from Sport Gisborne Tairāwhiti, and you're listening to our podcast, The Sideline Yak. No mai hoki mai ki te Sideline Yak. Today we sit down to kōrero with professional rugby player and Poverty Bay Heartland coach Miah Nikora.
Once I sort of got my mind to that positive state, things just started changing for me.
Miah currently works for the Poverty Bay Rugby Union as the Game Development Officer. He is the head coach of the Poverty Bay Heartland rugby team and is the assistant coach of the 2023 New Zealand Heartland XV rugby team. We talk about his new vocation as a coach, but more importantly, Miah takes us on a journey of his career as a professional rugby player. How the love of the game and wanting to make his family proud set him on a path beginning at Gisborne Boys High School onto the national age group scene through the New Zealand NPC competition and then overseas playing in Ireland and Italy. Miah shares his stories of this incredible time in his life, the dedication to make it as a professional rugby player and the setbacks that occurred with non-selection and injuries. We discuss how he overcame adversity through a positive mindset and confronting those challenges head on. We chat about the support of his family, his reflections on his career, and his natural move into the rugby coaching space. This is a great listen for coaches, parents, and especially aspiring athletes. Kia mana hou. Enjoy. Kia ora Miah. Thank you for joining us today on the Sideline Yak. I just want to dive in. We're going to do something a little bit different today. I want to dive into something that's topical as the Lahore Cup final versus West Coast. Obviously, we didn't get the result we wanted. I'm really keen to talk to you around, as a coach, the halftime talk, because the boys were down 23-0, and from there you came back storming out in the second half. What did the halftime talk look like to be able to get those boys up to where they needed to be?
Well, it wasn't one of those sort of go off at them type halftime talks, because the effort was still there. When there's sort of lack of effort, that's when it can be frustrating as a coach, and you sort of go into halftime and you need to deliver a stern message, or that's how I look at it. But I could see that the effort and intent was there. Things that were sort of not going so well for us was around our discipline, like our breakdown discipline. We were giving a lot of penalties away at the breakdown, and our scrum was under a lot of pressure. So key sort of messages at halftime were around sorting that discipline out, making better decisions at the breakdown. And then we'd been forced into making a change at scrum as well, just to try and shore that scrum up. So we thought if we could get those couple of things right, maintain a bit of continuity with the ball, because we're at our best when we're building phases. We couldn't get our attack game going in that first half because we were giving away penalties all the time, and they were living off the back of them with territory and possession. So we thought if we could nail our scrum, sort out our breakdown, and get some continuity into our game, we could sort of get back into it. And it was just we've been here before, boys, was the last message. We've been down by bigger scores at half time and come back to win. We did it last week. Let's just go out there, nail those three things and see what happens from there.
You mentioned it wasn't a going off at them conversation. Kind of coach you in terms of that. Do you have those situations where you need to do that, or is it you're quite level-headed, quite calm, and they're able to react based on that?
Usually quite calm and level-headed, but the only time I do get frustrated is when I do see that lack of intent and effort, really. Like, especially in the physical parts of the game, you can tell a team's a little bit off when the tackles are passive, riding tackles, where you're coughing ball up in the carry. You're not quite dynamic enough on the clean out, and that wasn't the case on that day. So it wasn't about going in there and giving them a bit of a blast, but there is a time and a place for that. But for me, that's when I seeing that lack of effort.
Yeah. No, that's cool. There's always that level of frustration, I suppose, as a coach, and just how we react to that, or how we're able to bring those guys together and get, or the girls as well, like depending on who you're coaching, and get them on the right path to where they need to be. But it's cool that you can identify it as well, and then being able to talk to them, get them going. It was always just a really interesting thing. I thought I just wanted to hit straight off the bat, just so we could get into it, because that's a massive achievement to come back. Just short, but massive. It's cool.
Yeah, and even I think the boys, they still had that belief in them as well. Like the leaders, some of their chat was really positive and good. Like the body language was still good at halftime. We knew we'd sort of just, well, they knew they'd sort of just let themselves down. So that was massive on their part as well.
How do you create that belief?
It's a tough one. I guess it comes back to trusting yourself, trusting your systems. It's tough. We actually had a tough patch through the middle of the season, and we're only losing by tight margins. But it's funny how much your sort of mentality changes, and you start doubting yourself, and you wondering what's going on. But I think if you just trust yourself, you stick to what you believe, and you stick to your systems. And once they do come right, I think that's where the belief is gained. I thought once guys sort of bought into what we were trying to do and saw things were working, and the boys implemented some things and they saw things were working, I think that grows belief as well.
Looking at just the Poverty Bay team, so you came on board, was it 2018 as a trainer? Would that be about right? Yep. And then from there, assistant coach in 2019, and then head coach 2022. Are you creating relationships along the way? Is that something that's probably helped up to the point that you are now?
There's been a bit of a changeover from 18 when I had that trainer role to where there is now. There's probably quite a few from 18 through to 21, and we sort of built up to a really good season in 2021 with winning the Bull Osborne Tonga that year. And then we sort of lost a few, and then probably lost a few more leaders from last year to this year as well. So fairly new in terms of leadership group, but still some fairly experienced rugby players within that. So still probably only have maybe around 50% of the team from even 2019, I'd say, at the moment. Yeah.
So what got you interested in coaching?
Just always been passionate about rugby, really. I guess while I was playing professionally as well, I had opportunities to coach through injuries, in particular one when I was at Connacht over in Ireland, and I had shoulder surgery there. And so I was out for 6 months, meant to be out for 6 months, and Pat Lamb, who was head coach there at the time, sort of got me in doing a lot of analysis on the upcoming oppositions that we were playing then, and that sort of got me into it a bit. And then I also helped coach a club team while I was over in Ireland as well. But particularly that spell where I was out with shoulder injury sort of opened my eyes up to the other side of the game, I guess. And just doing that video analysis stuff taught me a lot around trends and how people were playing. And I think it's given me a sort of good eye around that sort of stuff now as well.
I'm going to touch on that shortly, a little bit later, around the move to Ireland and the shoulder injury. Let's go right back to the start. Are you able to share with us what sport looked like for you growing up?
Yeah, sport was massive for me growing up. Actually started off playing league. I remember as a youngster, rugby was only new image, so it was like that two-hand on the hips type rugby, non-contact type stuff, and league used to be played on Sundays, and that was full-on tackle. So I started off playing league and new image rugby at the same time. Played for Turanga Panthers under 7s in the league, and then for Manatuke Mustangs under 9s actually. So started off with league and then came over to rugby, and rugby became my ultimate passion really. But in and around that, played cricket was another big one for me. Enjoyed playing basketball, touch, squash, played a lot through high school as well. So yeah, wakaama when I was younger, basketball, yeah, sport was a big part of growing up for me. Yeah.
Who are your influences back then? Like who got you, was anyone in particular that got you into sport?
I come from a pretty sporty family. My father had excelled at sports as well. His tennis, rugby, softball. Yeah, he was pretty much into everything. Uncles and aunties were into everything. And I think it sort of just grew from there. Family was a big influence on me. My uncle Sean Fitzsimons was sort of someone I looked up to. He came through and played New Zealand age grade teams as well in rugby, so he was someone that I looked up to. But yeah, all around I think my whole family had a sort of big influence on me and sport.
So when did rugby become a thing?
I think I remember being like standard 4 in 1996, and rugby had just turned professional. Pretty much from that moment on, it was something that I sort of aspired to and wanted to become, to be able to do it for a living. I probably started, I'd say around that point.
Moving into boys high, Did you see this as something that I want to really get going with?
Yeah, I always saw it as something I really wanted to get going with. And Boys High being the school they had been, and having a pretty clear path if you wanted to chase rugby dreams as well, seeing players come through there and become professionals, like the Gear brothers, James Kerr before that, one of the first ones, seeing those guys come through and being able to see that, I guess it was achievable through your local school was big. And yeah, I often have chats with my wife around, she remembers back because we met when we were pretty young, so she knows what I was like back at high school when I was pretty determined around rugby. I probably wouldn't advise my kids the same thing, with how sometimes I'd, put school aside and it was almost like no, I don't need that. I'm going to be a rugby player anyway. So yeah, I guess I always had that determination, but something I wouldn't sort of preach to young ones these days. Schoolwork and education and career outside of sport should be your plan A, and becoming a professional sports person really should be a plan B. But I had it the other way around, and I was just fortunate enough that it worked out.
Where did the determination come from? What set you on that path?
Yeah, I guess I just loved the game. I guess it was about just wanting to use my talent, I guess, to the best I could, to be able to make a good living. I could see people were making a good living out of the sport. It was about probably making my family proud as well. Was a big thing, yeah.
Any highlights or anything from the school side of things, from school rugby Boys High, that stood out the time that you were at school?
In terms of the rugby, I guess the connections you build with people at that age group, and you spend 5 years together, you create some unreal bonds with the people that you're around at that time, and that's always a big memory for me. It's like playing sort of first 15 was probably one of the highlights of my career, actually. If there was, I guess, go back and play for one team, I'd probably want to go back and play for Boys High again.
It's amazing you say that, because I was just listening to a podcast the other day and they were talking to Josh Cromfeld, and it was a similar sort of thing that he was mentioning around school rugby, and how he almost described it as being better than the other rugby. It's just like the same thing, like the relationships, the connections you build, you're growing up together, like just that sort of, there's so much happening within your life, like new experiences and stuff like that, but you're doing it as a group and you're with each other for, that long spell.
Yeah, it's and a lot of the time even before it, you've gone through primary and intermediate with these guys, so it's it's quite special, actually.
Nice. Cool. So moving on from school, then you've started moving into the New Zealand secondary schools and the under 19, under 21 level. What did that look like?
Yeah, I think it started off around fifth form with that New Zealand stuff, because remember New Zealand under 16s was the first sort of national team you could make in rugby, and I remember seeing the New Zealand under 16 team playing on TV. Must have been when I was in third or fourth form, and once I became that sort of under 16 age and fifth form, it was always a goal of mine to try and see if I could make that team. And we had the under 16 tournament, the Hurricanes under 16 tournament here in Gisborne that year, and they have all the selectors and stuff at that tournament, and that was probably my first step into the national scene, being able to get identified at that under 16 age. So they didn't actually pick an actual team that year, but they picked a group of 40 players from around the country to go into a camp, and being in the first 15 helped big time with that as well. So I was in the first 15 that year, and when selectors see that you're playing at probably the highest level or in New Zealand first 15 rugby, that goes a long way as well. So managed to make that camp, and then the New Zealand stuff flowed on from there. The next year was Hurricane schools, and then managed to make the New Zealand schools from there. And once you're in the system, you've almost got a bit of an inside running. As long as you can sort of keep performing at a pretty decent level, you sort of do have an inside runnings, and then the school sort of developed into the New Zealand under 19s and then the New Zealand 21s. So, but it wasn't all plain sailing along the way either. I'd made the New Zealand 19s 2 years in a row, and then missed out on the New Zealand 21s in 2005. That was. I was only lucky that I got called in through injury to the World Cup that year. And the following year, 2006, I was still eligible for the 21s, but I didn't even end up making the final trial initially for that. New coach came in and saw things a different way. I was just lucky enough again in the end that I got called in to the trial late and managed to impress enough to make that team to go to the World Cup in 2006, that was as well. So all in all, awesome sort of 5-6 years of my life being in those teams, and pretty fortunate, I guess, in a lot of ways.
How do you deal with being young, how do you deal with that situation where you don't even make the trials or you don't get picked?
I was contracted to Wellington at the time as well, and they had he was a professional development manager. So he was sort of someone that you'd go to if, battling a bit, I guess, and for a bit of advice. And so I went in and saw him sort of almost a day or two after I'd known I'd missed out on that trial. And we got on the phone straight away to the then coach of New Zealand 21s, was Greg Cooper at the time, and just asked for some feedback around my work-ons and what I needed to do to potentially get to the, if there was an opportunity came up and things like that. So that's how I sort of went about that, and then fortunate enough from there to get called into the trial and remembering the feedback that I'd been given from the coach. So that was how I'd sort of approached it, and I think that's a pretty good way to sort of confront things head on if you really want to know, and at least it keeps that coach knowing that you are hungry, and if there's an opportunity that that might be more likely to give you one.
Yeah, nice, cool. Now, I read an article around the 2004 under-19 team. Some big names in there: Richard Kahui, Kieran Reid, Hika Elliott. Would that be one of the highlights in terms of, because that was the World Cup that you guys won against France, one of the highlights of your career, or like in terms of that space, that time frame?
Yeah, at the time it was massive. I'd been involved with the team as well in 2003, and we lost the final to South Africa over in France. So being able to come back the next year and win the World Cup was huge. And as you said, there was some quality players in that team as well. So that was a massive moment.
Moving on from the age groups, and we head into, I want to say it's NPC, but is it NPC or it's the ITM Cup? It's like sort of that time, or was it more than it was the national sort of?
It was sort of NPC, then it moved to, they called it the New Zealand Cup for a while there while I was involved, and I think it changed to ITM, then Mitre 10. So it's had a few different names, but I think it just gone from NPC into New Zealand Cup when I was involved.
So you would have started with Poverty Bay first. Would that have been, when would have you been playing for Poverty Bay?
So I only played 8th grade stuff for Poverty Bay. Once I finished school, I signed with the Wellington Rugby Academy. So I moved down to Wellington at the end of my last year at Boys High into the academy down there. I'd signed there for a couple of years in the academy, but funnily enough, didn't end up making my first class debut for Wellington. I ended up playing for Taranaki. Was my first sort of NPC game. At the time, Wellington had quite a bit of depth in the first 5 area. David Holwell was around, Jimmy Gopeth was around, Piri Wipu and Tamati Ellison could play first 5 as well. So there was an opportunity in Taranaki, and I went there on loan in 2006, and that's where I made my sort of my debut, my first class debut.
And then back to Wellington?
Yeah, so after that loan spell, I went back to Wellington, and so I was meant to be there for the 2007 season, but I injured my shoulder sort of part way through that year. So from Taranaki, I'd been picked up in the Hurricanes wider training group for that year. So back then in Super Rugby, they used to pick a squad of, I think it was around 28, and then they used to take 7 guys in the wider training group that you're sort of on a part-time contract, I guess, over that season. So I was involved with that space for the first part of the year, and if you weren't making playing squad for Hurricanes, then you'd just go back and play club rugby. And I injured my shoulder playing club rugby that year. Continued on, tried to rehab it back, ended up doing some ligaments in my wrist as well that year. So I only played 1 or maybe even 2 NPC games that year for Wellington, and then went and got my first shoulder operation in November of that year, which put me out for 6 months as well. So 2007 wasn't the greatest year. I'd sort of been in the mix 2006, and then it got into that Hurricanes wider training group, and then 2007 was the first sort of real time that injuries had sort of struck, and sometimes they just all seemed to come at once, and 2007 was that year. So yeah, hardly any rugby played in that year, and at the end of that year had the surgery, and I'd actually asked my agent at the time to look at other opportunities, because there was some young guys that come through in Wellington. There's still some decent experience around there, so asked them to look for some new opportunities, and was sort of fortunate enough, I guess, that Tasman Marcos offered me a contract for 2008, so I ended up heading down there.
Talk to me about the shoulder injury like this. Obviously, when the first one pops up, what's the process with a setback like that? Especially when you say, like, there's other younger guys coming in, you got the old guys still there. I've got to start looking somewhere else. Like what's going around in your head?
Yeah, it's pretty tough, because then looking around at the same time, and you're seeing guys from my New Zealand under-19 team, like the Kieran Reeds and Michael Pattersons, the Hika Elliots, the Richard Kahuis, they're all gone. They're all Super Rugby players now. They're almost knocking on the door of All Blacks, and sort of been on that path and not quite got there. And like I said earlier, my main goal was to be a full professional rugby player, and you're not a full professional rugby player in New Zealand unless you're playing Super Rugby. So I still hadn't achieved that. As you said, younger guys are coming through. They're always nipping at your heels. We've got one of the system here, and the talent that comes through is pretty massive. So you've always got to be on top of your game. And then when injuries kick in, you're worried about that. You're sort of not where you want to be career-wise. And then it's just trying to take a step back. And like I said, the injury, I knew I had to sort that. I thought it was a good time to sort that. And then getting an opportunity with Tasman gave me that sort of fresh outlook and something to look forward to again.
What does the support look like when you're going through that recovery, or obviously the injury, and then waiting till you get to the time that you can play? What does your support system look like? Is it within rugby? Is it within family? What was helping you get through that?
Bit of both, eh? I remember, my wife and I were in separate towns at that stage. So I was in Wellington, she was in Palmy. She had a really good job. She actually became the youngest ever Michael Hill jeweller manager. So she had her career, and then I was trying to chase my career in another place. But she was still really supportive through all that. My mum as well. I was living with my mum at the time in Wellington, and she was a big support through that recovery. And then you have your physios and your doctors and stuff as well. You don't really see too much of the the team as much, especially in those early parts of rehab. And because I was moving on from Wellington to Tasman, I was even the Wellington physio and doctors were still seeing me. Had detached myself from that union and that team. Yeah, the medics around that time were a big help as well.
Because just something you mentioned there, when you detach yourself from the team and you go to Tasman, but then obviously you come back to Wellington. Is it Tamati Ellison got injured, and is that right?
Oh, that was in 2006.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so 2006 on loan to Taranaki, and played every game for them up until I think it was maybe round 8 or so of that season. And then Tamati Ellison got injured, who had been with Wellington, so I got called back to Wellington that year and ended up playing being in the squad for the semis and finals of that 2006 season for Wellington.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tasman was the last New Zealand team that you played for before you went over to Ireland?
Yeah. Yep. So Tasman was the last New Zealand team I played for, and I'd signed a 2-year contract with Tasman, but it had a clause in it that if I didn't make Super Rugby, then I had the option to look elsewhere. Thought I had a pretty decent season that year with Tasman as well. I started every game for them. Form was pretty consistent, but didn't catch the eye of any of the super teams. You sort of know when you're in the mix for Super Rugby around midpoint of the NPC. You usually get it, back in those days, you got a letter saying that you're in contention. So I was in contention, but didn't end up making any of the final teams. I probably would have even stayed if I'd made another wider training group as well, but didn't. So looked at options overseas, or asked my agent to look at options overseas at that time. And I didn't want to go on a short stint either, just in between season. I thought, if I'm going to go overseas, I want to give it a really good shot. And it must have been around Christmas time, 2008, just going into 2009, that an offer came through from Connacht in Ireland, which I was, obviously ended up being real happy with at the time. And so we headed over there.
So yeah, before you head to Ireland, you didn't get picked in the Super Rugby team. Was there frustration that because you wanted to, like, you were heading towards that professional career, and like putting Ireland aside, you're wanting to obviously stay in New Zealand? I suppose even the other question is, was the main goal to be at All Black, or was the goal always to be just professional, and Super Rugby was going to be the mark that you wanted to hit?
Yeah, I think it was, definitely that reassessment. Yeah, like I said, 23, ultimate goal overall for any aspiring rugby players is that All Black level, and to make that All Black level, you have to be playing Super Rugby, and I hadn't been able to do that. I hadn't sort of written it off, but like you said, it was time to reassess. I was at an age where I thought I didn't want to leave it too late to go overseas as well. So without being a Super Rugby player or an international player can be a bit harder to get something overseas, but I thought maybe putting the feelers out at a younger age might help me a little bit. And I signed for 2 years with Connacht at the time, but even in the back of my mind, I thought if things don't work out, or if there's an opportunity to come back after 2 years, I probably would. So I hadn't totally ruled out Super Rugby at that stage. I just thought it was, time to reassess, see what else was out there. And I probably started wanting to make some decent money as well, and that was what sort of Connacht gave me, I guess.
Nice. Yeah. Did your wife move to Ireland as well?
Yeah, so she gave up her career here with Michael Hill, and we both moved over. That was in June 2009, that was, yeah.
How did that go? Like, completely different country for rugby. Like, was there a massive change, or easy to fit into Ireland lifestyle?
The lifestyle was really easy to fit into, really good people. We were in a really good place over there, based in Galway in the west of Ireland, which is a real cool town, real vibrant. All throughout the year, you can sort of go out somewhere on any night, and there'll be a few places that are busy. So there's always something to do. It's got a couple of universities there, and we really enjoyed our time there. In terms of the rugby, I found that harder to adapt. The weather's different, rains a lot more. There was a bit more grind at the time, type of approach to the game, real physical approach to the game, where it was back here was probably a bit more free flowing, and I like the free flowing nature of that game. So I had to change and adapt quite a bit to the different style, and it took me a while. I remember after 6 months or so, I wanted to come home, and I even had started in the background informal chats with Tasman again. Assistant coach at the time had come up to being head coach there, and I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't enjoying it at the time. And at Connacht, I wasn't getting too much game time. Like I said, struggling to adapt a little bit to the game, but ended up sticking it out. We had a Kiwi trainer over there at the time, a guy called Greg Muller, who had been the trainer at the Blues here in New Zealand before going over there, and he was almost a bit of a life coach. And I had a few chats with him around my thoughts at the time, and he got me onto a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. Yeah, it just changed my whole outlook. Once I sort of got my mind to that positive state, things just started changing for me. And towards the end of the season, won a couple of games with kicks or drop goals for Connacht. We ended up in the European Challenge Cup semi-final that year, and we played Toulon, and they had like Sonny Bill and Johnny Wilkinson, and pretty stacked team at the time. We ended up playing them in the semi, so I ended up having going from probably some of the lowest times in my career to probably some of the highest within that first season. So and then it sort of just flowed from there. I got through that season, got through that initial season with Connacht in a really happy space, and then it wasn't too long into my second season that I got offered another 2-year contract. And I guess the thoughts of coming home were, at that stage, were pretty much gone. We were really happy, really settled. My wife was pregnant now, so having that security around us was a big thing too. Yeah.
Is there anything that you could share from that book that actually got you onto that path of being a lot more positive, or coming out of that time of wanting to go back home?
Yeah, I remember making up a vision wall around everything that I wanted to achieve around, not just in rugby, but in life sort of thing. So, the house I wanted, the truck I wanted, the teams I wanted to make moving forward, all that sort of stuff. So I had my vision board, and I think I left it in the bathroom, in the toilet, and every morning, sort of being there, and that'll be, the forefront. So that was a big thing for me, and just having that, that mind switch, like I said, into a positive mind frame, and having those things to look at, and obviously bring on a bit of belief, I think. And when things start happening, that's when you feel that reward around some of the mental stuff you've been doing, I guess. Yeah.
No, that's perfect. That's great. That's awesome. So the highlights out of Ireland in terms of in rugby, anything that you can share?
Yeah, there were a load of highlights. I think like the end of that first season was a big one for me. And then moving into, I think it was my third season there, we'd qualified for the first time ever, Connacht qualified for the Heineken Cup. So there's the Challenge Cup, which is sort of it's still quality teams, but it's not the main European tournament over there. The Heineken Cup, I think it's the Champions Cup now, is the big one that all the teams sort of aspire to. We managed to qualify for that in my third season, and I remember our first game for that was against Harlequins from England, and we played them over there, and Nick Evans was their first five at the time, and so I marked him that night, and we just fell short in that game, but we had some quality teams in our pool. We had Harlequins from England, Toulouse from France, and Gloucester from England as well. So we play home and away when you're in that Heineken Cup. So we played Harlequins in the first round, and then Toulouse came to us the next weekend, and they were stacked as well. Thierry Dusautoir, I think he was the French captain at the time. Luke McAllister had gone from here, and he was playing over there as well. Then Maxime Medard was the French fullback at the time. Josion, I think he was their second five that night. They were just stacked, and they ended up giving us a bit of a hiding in the end. But that was a massive moment for Connacht rugby. Usually the ground would only be around 6,000 capacity, but that night they bought an extra seating. It was 10,000.
Wow.
And it was just a massive week. Like the buzz around the whole town was huge, and I remember that atmosphere was unreal that night. Yeah,
nice. So one thing we probably haven't touched on is actually your position. Obviously, fly half, they call it, number 10, first five. When did that come about? Like when you started back when you were younger, that was a position that you were drawn to? And
I actually enjoyed playing in the midfield when I was younger, so more second five centre. I was pretty big, I guess. I was always pretty big for my age coming through until I got to probably around year 10, year 11, and then everyone else started overtaking. And position I trialled for the first 15 was first five, and then it sort of just came about from then. That became my position. I sort of dabbled in a little bit of fullback as well over time, and played a few games for Connacht at second five as well. But yeah, it wasn't a natural first five to begin with. Like I said, enjoyed playing in that midfield role, but then developed and became quite, passionate about that position. Yeah.
What was the position like when you described that the whole style of rugby was different in terms of it being free-flowing at home, and then over there it's a lot more full-on? Does that position become different for you when you're in Ireland, or no?
No, it is a bit different. I think there probably was a bit more kicking. Had to develop my kicking game while I was there. Another thing, adjusting, was goal kicking, and everyone's just quiet over there. That took a bit to getting used to. But then after a while, it does become second nature. But for that first wee while, it actually made me way more nervous because all the eyes are on you. Whereas back here, playing somewhere else, you could almost use the noise as a bit of motivation to help you with the kick. Whereas over there, everyone's just zoned in on you. So that was a bit of adjusting. But yeah, I think the main difference would have been around developing that kicking game in terms of a 10 over there. Yeah.
You look at kicking now, and it's like there's a there's a massive process that goes into it. Like when you watch them, and I suppose now they've brought in the clock to make sure we hurry up. Was there a process that you went through?
In terms of the goal kicking, I probably didn't figure out my style in terms of my technique. I probably didn't figure that out properly until I was around probably 25, 26. A lot of it was playing around with different methods and trying different things. But I think once you become comfortable and find a technique that suits you, then it makes things a lot easier. But yeah, I guess a lot of it's about figuring it out as well. People ask me around goal kicking these days, and it's something that if I'm coaching it, trying to not be too technical with it. A lot of it is feel and finding out for yourself what best works for you.
Did you get help in that time? Were there people that would help with the technique, or again, is it just something that you just had to figure out yourself?
No, there was still help along the way. I remember when I first made the New Zealand Under-19 team, and I was still living back here at the time. I wasn't the best goal kicker going through school, and just felt like I needed a bit of help at the time. And Glenn Udall, he was playing for high school boys in Poverty Bay at the time, and he was a really, really good goal kicker. He was probably the first one that I ever got coaching from back then, and I remember even that being a massive help. And he wasn't too technical either, pretty simple method. And then had Daryl Halligan. Once I made the New Zealand Under-19s, he came in and took us for some kicking sessions. And then Mick Byrne, who came in as the All Black kicking coach when I was involved with Wellington, he came in and ran a few sessions with us as well. So you take a bit of parts from everyone you come into contact with, I guess. When I was in Ireland, our backs coach, our assistant coach at the time, was a guy called Eric Elwood, who had been the Irish first five for quite a few years as well. So he was another one that I learned a bit off. So you take parts of all these different people, but then you still got to make it your own as well. So they were all a big help. But then through me trying different methods, adding little things in from what they'd passed on, that's where I sort of came up with my end technique, I guess.
Yeah. Staying in Ireland, and then the shoulder injury comes back?
Yes. No, I'd been in Ireland 4 years at the time, and then I'd only signed on for one more year. Pat Lamb had just been appointed as head coach of Connacht. So he was coming over from the Blues. He wasn't too sure around the direction of players moving forward, but he offered me a 1-year contract to stay on at the time, which again I was really grateful for. We were pretty happy there, pretty settled. We had our daughter. She had been moving into, should have been 3.5 at the time. My wife had actually just become pregnant as well. So this was right at the start of that 1-year contract. Once Pat had come over, we were going in pre-season, and it was just at training, and just an accident. I sort of fell awkwardly, had my arm out, and one of our big locks just fell on top of me. Ouch. while my arm was extended, and I knew I was in trouble straight away. And it was the same shoulder that I'd previously had surgery on, but this was now 6 years after. Yeah, so I knew I was in trouble straight away. Like I said, we just sort of found out my wife was pregnant as well. I was only on a 1-year contract, so I was coming up at the end of that season. Yeah, it was a tricky time, I guess, and I sort of had to make a decision at the time whether I did go down the surgery route, which I knew was going to keep me up for 6 months, or do I try and rehab it and give it 2 months and see if that rehab was going to work. But there was always that, if I go 2 months now and rehab it, come back, and it's still not right, then I have to go get surgery. Then I'm sort of riding off that whole season, and that chance of getting a contract is starting to diminish a little bit. So I took the option to get the surgery at the time. So this was September. The season goes through till May. So I just bit the bullet, got the surgery done with the aim of getting back as quick as possible so I could get some games at the end of the season. Yeah, so I was meant to be out for 6 months, that one. And I ended up coming back after 5 months. I think I was back around the February time. So there's still 3 months left in the season. But with that, I stopped drinking for the whole time. Didn't touch alcohol. Took all these supplements around collagen and stuff that we had a nutritionist at the time, and he sort of gave me some supplement ideas around that would help with the type of injury and the surgery I had and some diet stuff and that. So yeah, I managed to get back in February, and like I said earlier, during that 5 months I was off, Pat had asked me to do a lot of analysis stuff on opposition, which sort of got me more into that coaching sort of mind frame, and I'd often present to the team on my findings and where opportunities were in the team they were playing and stuff like that. So I think that's what sort of kick-started my coaching really. But then the determination to get back, because I had a baby on the way and a family to feed. So.
Nice. Obviously your mindset was a lot different than when you first came to Ireland, to be able to get you on the right track and get you moving a lot quicker, and that positivity would have been forefront of you going back there. Yeah,
and I'd actually only played, I think it was only a couple of games, only got to March, and again, fortunate enough to be offered a contract not too long after coming back. So I think that came through some of the work I'd done and what the coaching staff had seen at the time. So yeah, it gave me another year anyway.
Nice. So that was like another year after the injury. So when you came back, and then you got another year's contract after that, was it?
Right? So I came back from the injury in the February.
Yeah.
And then March, I'd already had another contract on the table. So I was coming up May, I would have been done.
Yep.
So lucky enough, I was able to sort of get one well in time before that sort of May cut-off date, I guess, and be able to plan ahead and have a bit of security.
Yeah. That final contract, that 1 year contract, was that heading towards the end of Ireland?
Yeah, so that became my last year in Ireland.
Yeah.
Once I got that last one. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so basically you're heading home?
Yeah, I definitely felt it was time for a change.
Yeah.
After that, that was my 6th year in Ireland, and I probably got to the halfway point of that season. There were some really good young players coming through as well. A guy called Jack Carty, who went on to play quite a few tests for Ireland, was coming through the system in Ireland, and he'd sort of snapped up the number 1, number 10 position at that time. I wasn't getting the game time as I previously had in earlier years there. So I felt like it was time for a change. And again, so it's, back to the agent, back to putting the feelers out again. And this one was really late. So I sort of come to an agreement with Connacht that we were going to part ways in around March of 2015. And then sort of from that point, it's, your agent's putting the feelers out and you're hoping something comes up. We wanted to stay over in Europe at that time if we could. And it wasn't until, because we'd always planned to come back after that season just for a holiday, just to come see our family and things like that. And it wasn't until our stopover in Abu Dhabi on the way home that a formal contract came through from a club in Italy. Again, which I was fortunate enough to get. So they got me another year playing professional rugby. But even on that flight, so we got the offer in Abu Dhabi and our stopover there on the way back, and then we had another stopover in Sydney, I think it was, before we came back through to New Zealand. And I had a message on my phone once we got to Sydney it was actually from Southland Stags, and Brad Moore, who's now Scotland coach and was Southland coach at the time and went on to coach Crusaders, was head coach at the time, and he had left a message just seeing what I was up to. But I'd already
signed.
I'd already signed while we were in Abu Dhabi and faxed it back to the club in Italy. But I was pretty comfortable with that decision as well. I think my time, what was I, 30, 31 at that stage? I think my time in New Zealand was well and truly over, I thought. So we were heading off to Italy after our holiday in New Zealand.
So was Italy sort of like the swan song, or was like, how long were you there, and then when did you come home? When did that transition happen?
So we ended up in Italy for 2 years. I'd we loved it over there as well. It was, in terms of family life and balance, it was awesome. And the weather, total change of climate, the food, the places. We had an unreal time as a family over in Italy. I thought I was done. I was going 32, 33, and I had a couple of concussions in Italy as well. Like, had a few throughout my career, but symptoms and stuff never really stuck around too long with previous ones I had. And I had Had one big one while we were in Italy. I played for a club called Petrarca, and our local derby was a team called Rovigo, which is not far up the road, and was local derby, and I managed to cop one around the head in a tackle. I thought it was just one of those ones, I've been here before, you feel a bit funny after the game, you might vomit, but then next day you're usually feeling all right, and then woke up the next day and wasn't feeling right. Woke up the next day, still not feeling right, and the symptoms just seemed to hang around forever. I didn't play a game for, I think it was around 6 weeks after that, and I felt fine going into my next game as well, but then woke up the next day after my first game back and the room spinning and things like that, and I hadn't even taken a proper knock in the game. Yeah, so I knew I wasn't in a great space then with the head, and tried to take a bit more time off, and still managed to get back into playing through different spells on the sideline. But that sort of thing started weighing in the back of my mind as well towards the end of Italy. So I thought that was going to be the end for me. But I ended up meeting a guy called Kane Hensey, who's from New Zealand. One of my mates who I'd met at Connacht, a guy called Troy Nathan, another Kiwi guy. He had started up these rugby camps over there. They were called Haka Rugby. And so I was helping with these camps in the summer after my 2 years in Italy. And I met a guy called Kane Hensey, and he was coaching a club over in Portugal. And sort of an opportunity came up there, and me and him got on like really well. So I ended up going over there and doing a bit of player coaching there for 6 months or so as well. But again, in terms of the playing over there, head knocks again sort of became a thing. I sort of got to a point where I felt more relieved to come through a game, I guess, without feeling any symptoms of something. And it wasn't like I was getting like belted around the head or anything like that. I think I just got to a point where I didn't really want to put my head in places that I'd done in the past as well. We had 2 kids, and I started thinking about other things in life, I guess. And I was 32 going on 33, so we finished up there in December of 2017 and headed home.
Did the playing finish around that time, or were you still playing when you came home?
Nah, that was it for me.
That was it?
So yeah, like I said, I sort of don't want to put my head in places where I used to. Yeah, so I sort of called it time on my playing days. I remember leaving my boots in the hung the boots up in the training shed. I knew that it was going to be my last game while I was over there in Portugal. So I hung my boots up there, and I've never stepped foot out on a rugby field as a player ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Was there a moment when you did that? What was going through your head when you did that, knowing that that's probably going to be, that's it?
I think I sort of knew at the time. My mind was pretty made up. Like, even I think on the playing side of it, once I'd finished in Italy, I sort of knew then that that's probably me. So yeah, I think I was pretty content at the time. Even though like it was always, I'd always sort of envisioned wanting to come back here and finish up as well. So, and then I'd come back here my first sort of year or two, still get a bit itchy feet sort of watching club rugby. And then once I got involved with Poverty Bay as a trainer, sometimes even thought then, could I do a sort of another year or so? Then the coaching obviously came along, and coaches changed in Poverty Bay, and Tom Ken's got the head coach job in 2019, and then asked me to come on board as an assistant coach. So once I'd got to that stage, I think I pretty much knew that playing stuff's, even though I pretty much knew end of 2017, once I got an assistant coach role at that level, I think that sort of cemented it. Yeah.
To finish off the athlete side of things, and I want to sort of go into a little bit around the coaching as well, were you happy in terms of the goals that you wanted to achieve way back when you were younger, saying like that professional level? Were you happy with where you got to and what you achieved?
I think I feel like I could have did more. I think that came back to, a lot of it was around my personality, I guess. I think as a young fella, I probably could have been a bit more confident. I think if I was more confident, that I probably would have got further in New Zealand. Obviously, I had a good ride of it through the New Zealand age grade teams, but then I don't feel like I kicked on like I probably should have. Yeah, with what I'd been through and the pathway I was on. So I don't feel I guess, full fulfillment in that. But like I said, I think if I had been a more confident person, I think I probably would have achieved a little bit more. Yeah.
Like, how would have confidence helped in that sense? Like, what would have made a difference?
I found it hard actually going from, small town Gizzy and then going to Wellington. That was a big change for me. You walk into the training sheds and there's All Blacks, there's Super Rugby players, and I guess I found it hard, just to come out of my shell a bit. As a first five, you're a general, you're a leader of a team, and I think I struggled in that space to really solidify myself, I guess, and give off the impression to the coaches and stuff that I could sort of lead a big team.
It's quite interesting. It's almost self-reflection in terms of like the confidence. It's
a massive thing. But I actually found it easier in Taranaki and Tasman, and then going to Connacht as well, where there wasn't much limelight or spotlight, I guess, around the team. It was a bit more low key, I guess, in terms of the status of the players that were in those other teams. So I guess I felt a bit more comfortable within those teams. Yeah.
Did it remind you a little bit of Gisborne, like like smaller towns, smaller communities sort of thing, rather than a big city?
Yeah, and I think we've seen a few like that come out of Gizzy as well, and just being, we're comfortable in our own setting, and the people around, and the tightness of it, and the small town sort of thing, and and I guess that's where I sort of flourished the most as well.
Big loop now back into coaching. You would have played under a ton of coaches. Are there any that stood out for you in terms of their style or that you looked up to?
Yeah, a lot, I guess, and no coach was the same either. I think probably Pat Lamb sort of sticks out the most, as he's probably the one that I learned the most of. At the time, there was times at Connacht that I struggled with him. But I look back, and the stuff that I learnt and now implement as a coach comes from what I learnt through Pat.
Is there anything in particular that you're applying now that you would have learnt from him?
He was big around the attention to detail. Sort of opened my eyes to probably the finer arts of the game. I'd had a lot of coaches previous to that, where it was a lot of big picture stuff, but he really nailed down on the finer details and the smaller skill aspects of the game, and how all those smaller things sort of fit into the big part.
There's something I've read a little bit about, so doing my research on you. First point, I want to admit that you're the first person I've interviewed that has a Wikipedia page, so I was like slightly nervous coming in, because that's huge for me. That's like massive to see that. But something I've read from videos that I've seen about, like listening to you talk and stuff, you've talked a lot about legacy within your within the team. Can you talk to me a little bit about that in terms of a coach?
Legacy, or kaitiakitanga, was one of our values a couple of years ago, and that sort of came through from the boys and the management team. We went through a process at the time around getting some direction and getting some values in place, and kaitiakitanga was one of those, and within that comes legacy. So I guess legacy comes back to the team you're a part of at the time, the organisation you're a part of, and you got to reflect back on what's gone in that team, in that organisation. The great players, the great teams, the great people that have been involved in that team, and how you can best respect them, but also what can you add to the legacy of your team, of your union, of your organisation. So what we wanted to just add to the legacy that had gone by in Poverty Bay Rugby. Yeah.
And in terms of culture, are you able to share any examples of how you've been able to create team culture?
Comes through your values and everyone being on the same page as well. So we had kaitiakitanga, manaakitanga, whanaungatanga were our values that we created in 2021. But as we touched on earlier, there's been a bit of a shift in terms of personnel in the Poverty Bay group since that point. So after last year, we felt it was time to refresh. So we went through the process again this year and came up with some new values, came up with focuses that we really wanted to hone in on coming back from the review that we had at the end of 2022. So we freshened all those things up. Then for me, it's about having a strong leadership group we created this year. We did something different again. So after we'd done our value session, which was part of our camp weekend, we got the players to put in 2 votes each around who they thought should be part of that leadership group. Trying to take, and one of our focus out of that was trying to be a bit more player-centred going into this season. And then, so having a strong leadership, and then it's about, once you set your values and your behaviours you want from those values, it's about actually living and believing those. I think if that doesn't happen, then waste of time having values written up the wall if they're just going to stay up there. So if you can get a good group and actually live those values, and you got good people around you. People's a big thing. You got the right people around you. I think that's how culture's created as well. And winning goes a long way as well. I've found, being part of winning teams or just puts everyone in a happier space. But to get through those tough times when you're losing, you do need those good people around. And for me, it's about walking the talk and living your values.
It's a huge thing around like the environment, and like what does it look like in terms of how do you develop people over that professional, like obviously like you said, like winning is a big thing, but how do you incorporate that development into it? Because like I know when you get to that stage of like playing for Poverty Bay, you're looking at results, but there's also that development that you want to be bringing in too, to be able to create the base or create the team that you're wanting to hit the top mark.
Yeah, and I guess if you aren't getting results on the scoreboard, then you got to put your mind back to the small wins you're having, like the guy that's he made his debut first game for Poverty Bay, and how proud he is, the development of a guy that's come through and made the Hurricanes under 20s and things like that. So yeah, even though it is hard at the time when you're not getting those results on the scoreboard, you've got to celebrate the small things as well, and that was something we try to do as well. Every small thing we celebrate, every day boo game, when you get your wicket number, if you make a team, or if you make so many tackles and stuff like that. So we always try and celebrate the small ones as well.
With your coaching career, like what are your goals? Because you've looked at the Heartland 15, you were a coach observer in 2021, and now you're assistant coach. Have you got aspirations? Where are we heading? Where's Miah heading as a coach now?
Yeah, ideally, I think I'd probably want to end up as a professional coach in rugby, but I sort of haven't got a step by step process or a timeline in terms of when that'll happen. I sort of take every moment or opportunity as it comes. At the moment, and for the last couple of years, Poverty Bay has been my focus, and I want to have success here and do really well here first and foremost. And then if other things come up that I feel that I might be keen to put my name in the hat on, then I will, like this Heartland job that I go into next week. But it's not all planned. I want to be here by this date, I want to be there by this date. I'm pretty happy in the moment with coaching and coaching Poverty Bay. And then, like I said, if there's opportunities that come up that I feel I might want to have a crack at, then I think that's what I'll do. Yeah.
Is that just life? Back as an athlete, you had a very clear pathway, like this is where I want to go and this is what I want to achieve. And now, like almost like part 2 of your life, like in terms of we're going the coaching role, and it's a little bit more relaxed. Is it just life that's created that, or like what's changed? Because you did mention when you were younger you were determined and you had that goal, and like now you're quite relaxed. And I've always known you as being quite relaxed.
I still have that ambition, but I'm not like I was when I was younger, where I had to achieve this to be sort of happy, I guess. My kids are really happy being here in Gisborne. We're pretty happy being here as a family. I'm pretty content, like I said, with where I am. I want to do the best for our region and for Poverty Bay. But yeah, definitely a more, I guess, relaxed, take it as it comes. I don't know if that's the right sort of phrase, but yeah, I still have ambition, but I am, definitely a bit more relaxed in my approach.
Moving forward again in the coaching space, you applied for the Heartland coach role in 2021, but didn't get it. But you actually took up the offer of observer. What did that look like, just in terms of, were you just like involved in the team, just watching?
Yeah, so like you said, applied for that job and for the assistant job in 2021 as well. But just missed out on that one, but then was asked to come in as a coach observer, they call it. But I ended up going into their camp in a pretty hands-on role. Ended up being sort of the defence coach for that. It was only a one-game campaign, so we were only there for 5 or 6 days. But I really enjoyed my time in that space at the time. And Nigel Walsh, who was head coach then and is head coach again this year, looking forward to working with him again. But yeah, it was a lot more hands-on than I envisaged. I thought I was going there to just sort of be a bit of a spectator, sit back and observe how they ran things. But Nigel's not like that. If you're sort of involved anywhere in the camp, then he likes to give jobs to people and empower people. So yeah, learned heaps and looking forward to this year.
It's massive, eh? Because when you think about it, like, and it's something that, so we both know Flo, and he talked around in his podcast, it's like taking those opportunities. So obviously you applied for the job, didn't get the job, but an opportunity came up. And even though it was what you thought it would just be observing, then all of a sudden you're put into that space and you actually got a job and a role. And it's just highlighting when those opportunities do come up, they're massive, and they can, move you on to other areas. And
yeah, it's interesting because when I interviewed for the job this year, and Nigel's on the interview panel as the head coach, and he referenced back to that campaign and sort of the work I'd done within that, sort of probably even helped me along into getting the role this time. So yeah, it's about opportunities and definitely making the most of them.
Almost finishing up here. Now, when did you start working for Poverty Bay Rugby?
So I started here in 2019. A sort of an opportunity came up as they were looking for referee development manager at the time. It was only a part-time role, and I probably couldn't have taken the job with it only being a part-time. Josh and Boys High managed to come up with an agreement at the time that where I could work sort of part-time in Boys High and part-time here. So that's when I made the move I was at Campion in 2018. As you know, first year out of playing professional rugby, that was a massive learning curve for me actually, and then back into the rugby space, where I always wanted to come back into in 2019. Yeah. So
highlights or any achievements that you've had within the time at Poverty Bay Rugby, like in the work space?
Yeah, we talked about this last week as a staff. It's like seeing people develop from, where they start from or where you've started from a few years ago, and then to seeing where they are now. Like there's a few referees that are now refereeing senior rugby, and, to see their development. There's boys that get selected to go on to high honours from here. There's coaches that you see develop and go from being school or club coaches to being rep coaches and higher. So, for me, it's about seeing other people achieve through, I guess, a bit of your work. Yeah, those are my highlights. We've had some tough periods like through COVID and things like that, where I think us as a union really dug deep and got through that challenging time really well and came out the other side of that really well through working hard. So yeah, a lot of things to be proud of, and nearly at the end of my 5 years here now, I think. Yeah.
Finishing up now, and this is a question that we ask all our guests. What does the value of sport mean to you?
I think sport, the positive aspects that sport brings are massive. Not only on the team side, I love the team side. I love the camaraderie and the, you sort of go into battle with a group and you to come out on the other side and you form those bonds and you create some real special memories. So that's in terms of the team aspect. I love that side of it. On the individual side as well, it's around especially if you're an aspiring athlete, the discipline that's required, the determination, the sacrifice, all those sort of things come into it. And I think you really develop those especially if you do want to be, a professional athlete or a high level athlete. Those sort of skills really develop. And what I've found is that massively transferable into normal life as well. The skills you learn in sport, both on the individual side and the team side. So, and then there's the health benefits as well, which are huge. So, yeah, sport. The value of sport for me is massive. Not only the physical aspects, but the mental side and the team side, and then what you can transfer from sport into day-to-day life.
I think that's a perfect place to finish. It's a massive story. Like your journey is incredible. It's amazing. And I think not only like just in terms of now, obviously you're going into that coaching space, people listening today, obviously the coaches and parents are going to be loving it. But I think those athletes, those kids that are looking at potentially that career, I think your story that will resonate with them. I think it'll be awesome. So, like with these shows, we've been talking to coaches and around their areas of work and what they've been up to. But I think it's really nice to see that journey as an athlete. And I think that'll be something that's going to be really exciting for people to hear. So thank you so much, Ngā mihi nui, for coming on today. And I appreciate you've a busy man and I appreciate the time that you've been able to spend with us today, and the stories that you've shared with us today are incredible. So thank you very much.
Sweet. Thanks for having me. And like you said, if, athletes, coaches can have a listen and take something out of today, then, that's massive for me as well.